Hello and welcome to A Little Crafting. My name is Annie and I am coming to you from Surrey, which is southwest of London in the UK. This is my bi-weekly podcast where I talk about all the things I've been making over the past couple of weeks and any new crafting endeavours that I've committed to. So mostly I talk about knitting and sometimes I talk about weaving, sewing and yarn dyeing as well. Though I haven't done much of the latter two over the last few months. So these episodes generally focus more on knitting at the moment. In terms of where you can find me on the internet, I am a_little_crafting on Instagram, and on Ravelry I am Ankiwoo. And today is Sunday the 13th of February. So welcome to anyone who is new to watching my episodes. Thank you very much for joining, and welcome back to anyone who is a long-term viewer. I really appreciate you following along. I try and get these done every couple of weeks, and then I've done some sporadic other recordings over time that I will pick up again sometime soon. As always, do leave a comment down below if you are interested in anything, and anything I talk about in this episode will also be linked in the description box below. I tend to try and use links that aren't Ravelry just in case people have issues with using Ravelry. But a lot of the time it's difficult to find those, so apologies for that. It will be fairly clear in the link if it's a Ravelry link. Let's jump in to actual knitting content, and I'll talk about what I am wearing first of all. So this is the On the Grass sweater by Locatelli. I believe it is knit from the bottom up. I'm not 100% sure on that. I knit it quite a while ago. And it has a lot of this lovely moss stitch all over, and then it's also got ribbing on the sleeves and also as the collar. This is knit in what the pattern calls for, which is Malabrigo Rios, which is an Aran weight yarn, I believe. It is superwash and it is hand dyed, so I did alternate skeins using the helical method for this sweater. It is in the Azul Profundo colourway, which is this lovely deep blue colour and suits me very well because I love blue a lot. And yeah, I enjoyed knitting this sweater. I think it was my third sweater ever knit, so I was fairly new to kind of sweater construction and everything. I don't think I picked up very well for the sleeves. Since then I've probably learned much better how to actually knit and pick up stitches. I would say that since knitting this sweater and wearing it, I am not a massive fan of using superwash wool for a sweater. And the reason that is that it's very, very stretchy. So when I put this on, for example, you'll see that the kind of sleeves pull down. The collar doesn't sit especially well, but I think it's also because I'm not used to having a boat neck. So you'll see I tend to wear things with long sleeved tops underneath, and actually the boat neck doesn't really work with it. I do find this sweater very flattering once I do have it on, but I personally wouldn't use this yarn again for a sweater unless I was knitting it at quite a tight gauge, just because it goes a bit funny. You know, you can stretch it out quite a lot and it doesn't really revert back to its previous form. But I was very, very happy with this when I first knit it, and I got a lot of compliments as well. And I do wear it every so often. I just find it a little bit difficult. I keep saying I need to add a couple of stitches up here to tighten the collar a bit up a bit, but I haven't done so yet because I'm a bit lazy about doing that sort of thing. And when I decide to wear it, I just wear it. I don't think about the fact that I need to do that beforehand. So yeah, I think this was a really nice sweater to knit. Like I said, I probably wouldn't do it in the same yarn again, or at least maybe do it at a tighter gauge anyway. That would probably work better. But yeah, that's the sweater I am wearing. I probably won't knit this pattern again though, overall I don't think, just because I have so many others. And I've got some others that I love more, I suppose. That's the thing. But yeah, it's a nice sweater. anyway, and I like wearing it. So let's move on to what I have finished over the last couple of weeks, and I have been quite busy, but I've only finished one project so far because I've been doing a lot of casting on and starting new things. So my finished project is just this one. It's the Beloved by Solenn Couix-Laurier, and it is a baby hat with some double moss stitch. And it is my go-to pattern, and I showed it in the episode last week as well. So I've knit a couple of these for a friend who has 2 children, 2 boys, and they really like their hats, but they're getting quite small, so I've knit them some in a bigger size so that hopefully they fit this time. I used Debbie Bliss Cashmerino Aran for these hats. That's just my go-to for children's knits because it's soft. It's wool blend, and it's got cashmere in it, and it stretches quite a lot, so this will fit them for quite a while if you look at how much. So it's a bit like the Malabrigo Rios actually, in that it stretches, but in this way it's a good thing. And you have a really good array of colours in this yarn as well. In the UK it is exclusive to Lovecraft, so the only place you can buy it is from lovecrafts.com. But I tend to get a few things there, so it's not usually any trouble to chuck another ball of this in with some other yarn that I'm buying every so often, just to make sure that I've got enough for any friends or family's babies that are on the way. So yeah, I knit the child size, so it seems a little bit small, but I don't have the right idea of the size of a child's head. I think it should be bigger than this for some reason, even though I have quite a small head. So maybe it's just my perception of how big a child's head should be. But we'll see. If I'll let you know when I come back from holiday in a couple of weeks and see if these actually do fit the boys. If they don't, I will let you know so that you know that maybe size up to a small adult for a 5-year-old if their head's a bit bigger than normal. There you go. Yeah, free pattern as well, and I highly recommend it. It is my go-to, and therefore that it makes showing this quite boring because I've shown the same thing 3 weeks in a row. But there you go, that is one finished object from me. That's the only thing I finished this week. I have actually been unwell, as you can probably hear from my voice as well. I've had a cold, which was pretty bad actually. I suppose relatively to COVID, hopefully the long-term effects aren't the same, but like the week that I've had the cold, or the week and a half that I've had the cold, I've felt much worse than I have done before with colds, and it's probably because our immune systems are so used to us being away from people for so long. You know, we've effectively been in and out of lockdown for 2 years, trying to stay away from each other, and then suddenly catching a common cold, and it feels worse than it should be. But yeah, it's almost gone now, so I'll be very pleased once I've got rid of this little croakiness that's left over. So yeah, that means I haven't, I guess, knit quite as much. I've done quite a lot of sleeping, but I did manage to go on my craft holiday with my friends, even though I was a bit late because I stayed home for a bit longer to try and recover. So I have got some progress made on a few projects that I was knitting there. And if you watched the last episode, you'll recall that I cast on quite a few things. When I edited that episode, I realised that I probably cast on way too much to really make progress on that many projects. And I found myself at the weekend getting really addicted to one particular project, which I will show you now. So I cast this on 2 weeks ago, and almost knit exclusively on it for an entire weekend away. And that is the Pradera wrap by Jocelyn Tunney. This is a pattern, I believe, owned by kind of Manos del Uruguay, who are a yarn company who tend to create really lovely hand-dyed yarns. And this is a free pattern, So it's available for free, and it's a very, very simple chevron scarf. And what I am doing is using my Beehive Yarns DK mini skeins from the Cozy and Warm advent calendar for 2021 that I opened during December. And it is designed to be a fade. So rather than using kind of the DK minis for the brims of hats and things like that, which was originally my plan, I decided that I would like to use them all together in one project. So here we are, and I'll show it in sections. So this was colourway number 1, and then you've got number 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and I've just cast on the 7th, which is more of an orange. So yeah, I've knit 6 and a bit 20 gram minis, which is looking absolutely fantastic. I know I'm not actually fading it together because it's sort of designed as a gradient in a way, but I will get some areas like between these two which are a bit more stripy, and then the first one and the second one look quite different, but I don't really mind that. I think it's going to be lovely, and I highly recommend this because it is so simple and you just keep going. I think the fact that I'm changing colours and minis every so often means that I am spurring myself on to get onto the next one. And whilst it's not completely mindless because you do have increases and decreases, it is simple enough versus plain stockinette, which I would get bored with. It has that little tiny bit of interest to keep you going, but it's not so interesting and distracting that you can't have a conversation or watch TV or do something else at the same time. So I am really happy that I chose this pattern. Obviously I've only knit 6 minis into this, so I think once I'm done with all 24 it is going to be a huge scarf, but what I'm looking forward to is having a really cozy thing to wrap around me, because it's more of a, well, it's a scarf / wrap, so having it over my shoulders, having it curled around my neck is going to be really lovely and cozy and warm, which is exactly the name of the advent calendar. So yeah, it's going to be pretty long, but I am massively enjoying it at the moment. I believe on a rare occasion I actually used some rather large needles for this, so I'm using 4.5mm, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have a feeling they are what the pattern calls for. So it is creating this lovely drapey effect, but I am not getting any holes or kind of gaps where you can see the light through, which is great. But it does mean that my one might be a bit wider than the pattern would normally be, because my gauge will likely be looser on those larger needles. Yeah, and I'm using higher sharps as per usual. So these are my go-to needles. I have an interchangeable set of both the 4 and the 5-inch tips, so that I have a range of different options to choose from when I cast on a project. Yeah, so really happy so far. I think my favourite colourway is probably this kind of corally one. It also has pops of green in it. It's really pretty. So this one here. But I love them all together, and I think it's going to be beautiful at the end. It does end up fading into blue, so it goes all the way through kind of pinks and then into oranges and then into blues. I've obviously started the orangey warm section here, so I'm really looking forward to getting through all those colours. I will definitely need to wind up some more yarn soon, because I've only wound up 8 minis, thinking, oh, that'll be enough for a while, but I am going to take this skiing with me in a week's time, because it will be the best project to sit at the dining room table, have a chat with my friends, and yet at the same time knit along and you know, make progress on this. Yeah, I believe it's just 100% merino DK. It might be sock. I'd need to double check the details of the advent calendar, but it's a very, very soft yarn, superwash, and obviously looks really lovely as well. I'm scrunching it up now, which isn't I could actually already put it on, to be honest. Look, there you go. I have a cowl. So yeah, it's going to obviously wrap round a lot more times than that, which is great. Really warm, and then I'll be able to choose what colour kind of shows up at the front depending on what I'm wearing. So yes, I imagine this is going to be super versatile. It's the first time I'm actually, you know, going for it with a full project out of my mini skeins, especially advent ones, because I'm so bad at using my advents. I really love opening them and seeing all the colours, but then I find it hard to decide what to do with them. So I'm pleased to have found something where I'm just going, right, this is going to be perfect, let's just do it, and I'm getting on with it. So yeah, highly, highly recommend the pattern as something really nice and straightforward and free. And you know, it's actually designed to have 2 fingering weight yarns held together, so you could do it with a fingering weight advent calendar and then actually do a fade, so it kind of marls them all the way through. So yeah, that's why I picked this pattern, but it's working well with the DK advent minis too. I am keeping this in my Hide and Hammer project bag, which is a 03, and I got that from my husband for Christmas this year. I love the berry colour of this one, and the leather straps as well, that will start to kind of get a bit of more colour in them as they get touched by the sun, so it'll kind of wear really nicely with time. Yeah, and this fits loads. To be honest, I could put all of my advent mini skeins in here. I only opted for 8 because I didn't want to spend my life winding yarn, but yeah, I could put all of them in here as well. There we go. So that's the first work in progress that I've made the most progress on over the last 2 weeks, but I'll go over the others as well, just ones that I have made progress on. So the next one is in my antler and acorn bag. I've actually moved it from the other bag that it was in, and this also was a lovely gift from my husband because he's the only one who buys me expensive project bags. This one is my weekender sweater, which I also cast on 2 weeks ago. This one I am knitting out of my favourite yarn, which is Dererum, Natura, Gilliatt. Here's the label. And this is the Ciel colourway, which is this lovely sky blue colour. It is an Aran to worsted weight yarn, as it kind of puffs out a little bit due to the way that it's spun. So it's a really, really lovely yarn that I use a lot. And this is the Weekender by Andrea Mowry. It is a really, really popular pattern of hers. I'm just going to take this off the end so it stops clanking. And this is actually knit inside out, so the reverse stockinette side will show. And I have not got very far because I got so addicted to my wrap and knitting that. But yeah, you can see it's going to have a line of slip knit stitches all the way up the centre at the front and the back. I'm knitting it from the bottom up as well, and it actually starts with a split hem, and you do a tubular cast on. So I've been getting used to the tubular cast ons recently, but I think it's okay now. I've got the hang of it. It's definitely an interesting way of casting on. It does take a long time, but I understand why people commit to it. It has a very, very nice edge at the end. So yeah, so tubular cast on, and then I'm just going to be you know, knitting in the round, slipping that one stitch every so often, and that'll be it for a really long time, I think. So next time I show it, I hope I'll have quite a lot more progress, because I'm just going to be knitting the body all the way up to the sleeves, and then it will get interesting. Something that I hadn't really thought about is that this sweater does also have a boat neck collar in a very similar vein to this one that I'm wearing. I think it'll be fine. I might just do what I was planning on doing with this and just make it a little bit tighter here, so that it doesn't feel like it's going to fall off my shoulders. And yeah, this is going to be a different sweater altogether anyway, because it's going to be made out of non-superwash yarn. It'll be lovely and cozy and loose anyway, so I think it will be just a bit different, but we'll see. I'll obviously give feedback once I've finished this one off. What else do I have in here? Yeah, I find that Dererum Natura Gilliatt softens up massively, so this is my swatch, and it feels so soft in comparison to the yarn that I'm knitting with. It's quite a rough yarn when you're knitting with it, but I never have any problems with it, if you see what I mean. And yeah, I think that's all I want to say at the moment about that. What I will point out though is that I have a new stitch marker which I got from my friend at Craft Weekend. So I'm going to show it off if I can. Well, it said Progress Keeper really more than a stitch marker. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there you go. It's this lovely blue and coral colour in a disc. And this is by Circle and Dash. So she is a friend of mine, and she makes lovely jewellery with handmade paper. I have a pin of hers for my mosaic cardigan that I use quite a lot. But yeah, she's made a whole load of little progress keepers in the same way as she makes her jewellery, which is really, really lovely. And I really love the colours that she's chosen for mine. So yeah, really happy with that, and it'll be nice to be able to track my progress using that lovely progress keeper on my weekender sweater. My next project is one that I was actually knitting on again when I was ill, which I should learn my lesson about really, but it is my Starflanket by Stephen West, and to you guys it probably won't look like I've made that much progress because it still pretty much looks the same, but I basically have, how many? Ooh, sorry, wrong way around. It looks like this. There you go. So I have, I think 5 rows until I go onto the brioche section, which was a section that I was really excited about, but I do think it's going to take me a really long time. So I don't know how many stitches are on the needles now, but it is pretty huge. Already it could basically be a large lap blanket so far, but it's a very similar type of knitting at the moment to the Pradera wrap, so it's quite mindless, you know, just increases and decreases every so often where I hit the stitch markers, and therefore it's just whizzing along, even though it's impossible for this to be whizzing along because it's so much knitting. But I am definitely picking up the pace on this one, and I'm hoping that by next time I record I will have some brioche done so that you can see what that looks like. I do need to remind myself what the colours will be for the brioche section though. I'm not sure if they go straight back to the orange and grey or if they do another combo, but we shall see. So yeah, great looking pattern, a bit of a mission still. I think I said last time, I will get there eventually, even if it takes me 10 years. And I'll keep working on it and showing it to you every so often as well. But yeah, I really like the way this looks. It really kind of pushes the kind of star effect very nicely. with this kind of extended stripe detail. So yeah, getting there. And I'm knitting that out of Willow and Lark in 4 different colours. This is another yarn that is exclusive to Lovecrafts. Willow and Lark Ramble. There you go. And it's a DK weight yarn. There is, so the pattern, you can go for all sorts of multicoloured yarns, in like Stephen West has done in one of his samples, or you can go for quite a simple palette like I've done and his other sample, but it does look very, very effective, and I'm gonna really enjoy having that over the back of my sofa once it's all finished. You can basically use it as a blanket anyway at the moment. It's just gonna become a bigger blanket. So yeah, that is the Starflanket and my progress on that. I promise at some point I will have something different to show rather than just the Garter Ridge stripe section. Very, very soon I will have something different to show, I promise. Next up is using up some of the yarn that I bought at Unravel in 2021. It happened in May. It's a festival that is in a town quite nearby to me in Farnham, which is also in Surrey, and it's not like a massive trade fair in a big hall, because the Maltings in Farnham is a series of rooms, and then they also have kind of like a theatre room. So you go through all of these corridors and see the vendors, and then go into another room, and you kind of get led through this maze. The yarn I am using is Garthenor Beacons, sorry. And Garthenor's an organic yarn producer from here in the UK. This is grown in the Falkland Islands, South Wales, the Scottish Highlands and South West England. Scoured and spun in Yorkshire and hand finished in West Wales. So this is the label. And the Beacons is 75% Polworth, 18% Romney and 7% Hebridean yarn. This is DK and the shade Basalt. And it comes in 50-gram skeins, 135 metres or 148 yards within that 50 grams. So yeah, that is the yarn, and this is what it looks like in a cake. So it's just a very light cream, but it's very varied because of the different breeds of sheep wool in here. So you have a kind of tonal effect. And I am knitting the Bolton Pass hat. This is a pattern by Espace Tricot. It is a free pattern again, and I am loving it so far. So it starts with a 1x1 twisted rib, which I think looks fantastic in this yarn. If you have a look, there you go. And then what happens is that, so on this side, you can see I've carried on the 1x1 twisted rib, but it will go into a point, almost like a kind of point at the top, at the front of the hat. And then the rest will be plain stockinette. But I love the way that this yarn looks in the stockinette as well, because it's really nicely tonal and varied. So yeah, and it is incredibly soft. I just want to keep stroking my face with it. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying knitting this hat, both because of the yarn and also the pattern. And the way that it's going to look at the end will be great. So I expect I'll have that done fairly soon as well. I have 2 balls of this yarn, so that's 100 grams in total. I'm not sure I'm going to need both of those for this, but I will see if I can use it for something else afterwards, or maybe just knit a second one if I enjoy it so much. We'll see if I have enough for that. Again, using high sharps on a circular interchangeable needle, and I'm on a 16-inch cable, which is what I prefer to use for hats. I am also using a double toggle to hold the stitches on my needles. These work really well as a bit of a hack. So I'll show you. Oh, there we go. As a stopper. It works up to 4mm. You can get like a bulk bag off eBay or Etsy, and it works really well just to prevent those stitches from falling off the needles when you put your project in the bag, because it holds the needles together and prevents that from happening. So yeah, this is in a bag I got quite a long time ago, but that I use as a hat bag normally. And this is by Quince Pie on Etsy. It's a really nice little round bottom drawstring bag with a ribbon and a toggle there. Yeah, I love this one. I love the colours and the one little fish jumping out of the water there. It's beautiful. So yeah, that is the last of my work in progress for this week anyway. I am aware I have other projects that are ongoing that I haven't really achieved much on, so I didn't want to show them this time around. But yeah, that is knitting for now. I have also been working on some weaving. I'm just going to lean over here and grab my loom. So I am knitting, or sorry, not knitting. I am weaving a scarf for a friend of mine. The father of the children with the hats, and I am doing it in Felted Tweed by Rowan. So that's this one here, that's what's forming my warp. And then for the weave, I am actually using a Crazy Zauberball by Schoppel wool. It's kind of a blue and white one. I don't actually have the tag anymore, so I can't tell you what colourway it is, but I just found this and I thought, oh, that would be good with the Rowan Felted Tweed. Rowan Felted Tweed has this lovely tweedy effect, so you'll get a kind of pops of the blue in specific areas, as well as this beautiful fade that you end up with. I'm not sure how much you can see of that, but it is fading from kind of dark to light and light back to dark every so often in terms of the blue. Let me see if I can do a bit more of a close-up. Yeah, that probably works better. You can see it a bit more now. So yeah, it's going to be this really muted kind of light blue scarf that I hope will look absolutely lovely. Yeah, I need to finish this week, so I'll be concentrating on doing a bit more weaving. This is a rigid heddle loom by Ashford. It is the 16-inch rigid heddle loom, and I am using the 10 DPI heddle for this. I learnt to weave a couple of years ago. I got this loom on eBay from the British Heart Foundation, which is a charity here in the UK, and obviously they'd acquired one, and so I got it at a good price. But they're not too expensive, and my main reason for deciding to get a loom was to use up leftovers of my knitting yarn. I don't seem to have done that so much recently though. I also use, I not only weave scarves, I also use fabric to knit, to make bags, to sew them, and I want to do a lot more with sewing this woven fabric. I also want to try a few more weaving techniques, because at the moment I'm doing a lot of plain weave. I've done a couple of pinwheel looks as well, but I've not really pushed my limits in terms of weaving techniques. I want to try and add another heddle to this, so I'll screw it in here, and basically it will allow me to do things like twill or tweed effect. So yeah, there's lots to explore with weaving that I haven't really touched the surface with, but at the moment I'm really enjoying weaving with gradients or fades, because I think it's just beautiful. I've woven a couple of scarves already, I think, with a fade, and also some fabric that I'm going to use for a bag for myself. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you're ever interested in this sort of thing, having a go at weaving. It's not very expensive relative to other fibre arts to get into. You just need the loom and some yarn, and you get a lot of exercise warping the loom in the first place, so walking backwards and forwards and trying to kind of warp it up takes a long time relative to the actual weaving process, because you can weave a scarf in a very short amount of time. If I did this with DK weight yarn, it'd probably take me 2 hours to do the actual weaving. It would take me 45 minutes to set up. So you do have to be a bit patient with the setup, and you need enough space, but you know, you can make room for certain things. You can use a chair to warp, and yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a very relaxing skill and kind of hobby once you get past that initial setup process. Yeah, and one day I'd like to have a big loom as well. Yeah, I also recommend Kelly Casanova as a kind of person to follow on YouTube. She has loads of really good weaving tutorials, and also Felicia of Sweet Georgia in the US. So she is Low Meets Loom on Instagram, and she does a lot of weaving content, but most of it is not on the rigid head or loom. So I then kind of have to go, oh, I can't actually achieve that with the loom that I have, but you know, for storage purposes this is nice and small, and makes for an interesting piece in my lounge. When people come over and ask what it is, I get to explain. So yeah, weaving again, happy to be doing so. I need to sew a bit more with my woven fabric, and then really start doing a bit more weaving again for fabric for bags rather than just scarves every so often. So yeah, that is what else I've been working on this week anyway. Let me put that back down. Cool. Finally, I want to talk about some acquisitions, and I was lucky enough to visit Unravel once again at the weekend, well actually yesterday, and I have some acquisitions from there, of course. I really enjoy the Unravel festival. I go with a friend every year. Some of my other friends also sometimes join us, and it's really lovely. So this year and last year, obviously we had limited numbers, there was timed entry, there was a one-way system, and honestly I found it much nicer because you can actually get to speak to the stall owners a bit more. They're not absolutely bombarded by people trying to buy stuff. You can have a conversation with them. We chose to go at 9 AM just when it opened, because we thought that would be the best time to be able to do a once around, kind of have a look at everything, have a chat with the owners of the stalls and get a good idea of what we wanted to buy. So I'm going to try and do this in chronological order, but I might not remember exactly what order I bought things in. So my aim for this year's Unravel was to go and find unusual bases or unusual ways of dyeing things. I have so much superwash merino nylon in my stash, fingering weight yarn, that I've hardly used. And what I find sometimes is that a lot of the stalls or the people selling at fairs tend to be selling hand-dyed superwash merino yarn. So I went with a bit of a mission, and said I'm not allowed to buy any of that. I also said if I'm going to buy anything like that, I am not allowed to buy one single skein, because what I'm finding is that I'm going, oh, I'd like to knit this shawl. Oh, but actually I need more than one skein for that, but I only have one. So yeah, that, and also finding things that I can match up with the stash that I already have. So my first acquisition was something that I saw from a distance, and it was the only one in the pile. And this is fingering weight blue faced Leicester yarn. It is 50 grams. It is hand dyed in the UK using natural dyes, and it's by Folkestone Harbour Yarn, which is folkestoneharbouryarn.com. And this is dyed with coccinelle and indigo, and I just thought, for natural dyeing on a fingering weight non-superwash yarn base, that those colours are so vibrant. So yeah, you can see a bit of the indigo effect. Let's pull that bit out just there, like the blue within that bright pinky purple colour. And this just stood out to me. And I thought, you know what, I'll make something with that. It's quite soft for BFL, I think. It's 50 grams, 175 meters approximately. Yeah, and I just saw this and thought, it's the only one there, I'm gonna have to buy it. So yeah, this will probably become something like a hat or a cowl, but I'll see. It's 50 grams, so it's not a huge amount of yarn, but it should go a fair way because it's fingering weight, and I'm excited to see how this knits up. I'm really interested in the way that it's been dyed, because it looks like it has this kind of striping effect throughout, and it really makes me excited for a natural yarn dyeing workshop that I'm going on in May, that I will have to feedback on as well. I was really impressed actually to see that there were, I think, 4 stalls at Unravel that were focused on natural dyeing rather than anything else, and I'm really pleased that that's something that people are kind of putting out there, because like I said, there's an abundance of acid dyers who are dyeing merino yarn, but something like this must be really hard to achieve with natural dyes, so I'm impressed. And there was some, you know, I was asking questions about how it worked, about what colours they used, what plants they were using, and I got lots and lots of information, which was really, really nice to be able to chat about their kind of natural dyeing experience as well. And isn't it wonderful that you get told what plants they're using to dye this? You wouldn't get told the acid dye recipes for some of the colourways from other hand dyers, so really, really cool. And a lot of the time I found that they were selling kits at the same time as just the yarn, so you could actually buy a kit and have a go yourself, which is great. Really lovely to kind of promote the expansion of people's knowledge and experience in something like natural dyeing. So yeah, that was purchase number 1. The second one was also some naturally dyed yarn. That seemed to be the way to go, this. And that was these 2 skeins. They are woolen flower, made of non-superwash fibre, sourced in France, processed and spun in France. It is actually 100% wool from the Bizette Blanche du Massif Central and Noir de Velay sheep from Polo and Co. And these are also dyed with I think it's coccinelle, I'm not 100% sure, correct me if I'm wrong, and indigo for this one. So this one was a really light indigo colour. So yeah, you can see I was channeling the burgundy pink yesterday. But yeah, the other reason that I bought these was because they're from the Massif Central in France, or some of the fibre is, and that's where kind of I've spent a bit of time in France because some of my family is from there. So yeah, I thought this was lovely. It's very crunchy yarn, but the lady on the stall did allow me to feel her shawl, which was knit out of this, and it does soften up. So I am going to be doing some colour work with this. It is fingering weight, I believe. Yeah. These are 50 grams. Again, they're very, very light and airy, but you get 200 meters in 50 grams, which is pretty good. And I'm going to be knitting some colour work, possibly a hat and cowl combo. We shall see. my friend picked out this one to go with this one. I initially was like, oh, I just want to buy this skein, and she picked out this one to go with it, and I think they're great colours as a combo. So I will have to have a look at what I'm going to make out of these absolutely beautiful naturally dyed yarns. Next up, I have a bit more of a story for you for this one. So I have suspected for a while that I'm allergic to mohair. I knit a colourwork cowl recently, which included the Cumbria fingering from the Fibre Company, and as I was knitting that, I was sneezing and sniffling a lot. So as we were going around the fair, I was feeling some of the mohair that was available, and I am pretty sure I'm allergic to it. Basically what happens when I feel a skein of mohair is that after a certain amount of time I get prickles all the way up my hand, so almost like a stinging nettle feeling. So doing that in the fair, kind of feeling stuff, I was actually looking for some Surrey alpaca silk, because I know that that's less likely to irritate, and yeah, I'm 100% sure the mohair is a problem. So I do have a big stash of some mohair that I was going to use for a sweater, that I am going to have to get rid of at some point, so I'll probably put it up on Ravelry and see if anyone wants it. But I did manage to find some lovely Surrey silk. So that's Surrey alpaca, 74% alpaca, 26% mulberry silk. This is heavy lace weight, it's 50 grams and 300 meters, and it is by Fruitful Fusion, who is a dyer who I've followed for a very long time but haven't bought anything from. So I was really happy to find something that's very, very pretty. This is kind of in blues, colourway is Ocean, and it's really, really lovely and soft, and doesn't give me that kind of like immediate or like slow prickle effect when I'm touching it. I am using this as a bit of a test, although it's absolutely beautiful yarn. So I went through my stash yesterday and was thinking about what I could pair it with. So I found a skein of yarn that I dyed not so long ago, and I thought this would mute this bright turquoise really nicely. It's actually blowing out a lot on the screen. It's not as neon as it's showing up, but I think that Surrey silk with the fingering weight turquoise will be really, really lovely and muted. I was also thinking it might look nice with another skein of yarn that I dyed up, which is this one, which will be much more varied, but I will probably try and just knit a hat, and just use these two and see what happens. And then if I knit a hat with those, I can also probably try the other skein that I had dyed up as well. But yeah, it's so, so soft. Like, I could just do that all the time. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful yarn. What I do find what I did find in the fair is that the trouble is that you don't know if it's Surrey or mohair to start with, so I was having to get my friend to feel it and have a look beforehand. So we were going around the fair going, danger or not. Yeah, there was so much beautiful Surrey alpaca as well. It's really nice to see such a varied quantity of bases at something like that, because again, a couple of years ago it would have just been all superwash merino nylon. So yeah, lovely. That was the next purchase. Then I went to a yarn dyer who I am aware of already. I have a skein that I received from a friend of mine for a little swap that we did, and that is Pigment and Ply. Now, I was super intrigued by this yarn. Let me Let's see if it will focus. Come on. There you go. So this is 100% superwash merino DK boucle. So I was just drawn to this because I was interested in how it would knit up, and then actually I thought how it would weave up afterwards. I love this colour. It is Peacock and the Dragon, and she had this in regular kind of fingering weight yarn as well, but I just thought this was a really interesting base to try. I asked the owner of Pigment and Ply how this knits up, and she said it just basically, you can't see the knit stitches, you just end up with like a fluff. And I had a thought, how is that going to weave up? So I'm gonna try a little weave. Let's see how I get on with that, and then what I might do, if I decide that that's worthwhile, I might end up weaving some fabric with it and making a bag and see how that turns out. But it might not work that well if I can't see the fabric itself through the weave. But I'll take some pictures and obviously document what I've done just to try it. And then if it does work out really nicely, I might be buying more from Pigment and Ply, because I, out of like a lot of hand dyers, I really admire the way that she decides on colours. A lot of the time she uses paintings, like classical paintings, to pick out colours, and then dyes the skein to go with the painting. And then she also swatches a lot. So her Instagram is full of kind of the concept art, and then the final result plus a swatch so that you can see how it actually knits up. And she was offering a whole load of different bases as well, which is great again. So I was really happy to buy a skein of something from her. That's that one. I also went to Hide and Hammer, so they also had a stall at Unravel, and obviously I have a Hide and Hammer bag now, but what I wanted was some shawl cuffs, and so I got two in different colours. There is a kind of tan colour and a sort of turquoisey blue colour. There you go, see those there. So these are a great idea. Basically it's to enable you to kind of hold a shawl in place, because the trouble with shawls is that, yeah, especially certain shapes like an off-center triangle, it's a bit tricky to make it stay in the position you want it to be. So these allow you to kind of snap it shut and kind of hold the shawl in place, and they did have some demos of how it worked on the stall itself as well. So I wanted a couple of those and picked them up. Then I also went to Botanical Yarns, and this is where I got one of the ideas for buying some Surrey alpaca and silk. So this is obviously channeling the burgundy again. It's a Velvet Mirror cowl kit, and Velvet Mirror is a recent cowl pattern by Andrea Mowry, which includes both Surrey and kind of regular merino fingering weight. And yeah, when we saw the cowl in person, both my friend and I were immediately wanted to knit it, basically, even though seeing it on Ravelry or online or on Instagram, we hadn't really focused in on it, but actually seeing it in person, seeing the softness of the Surrey, was just all we needed to be able to go, let's knit this cowl. So we've both picked up some yarn for that. My friend actually already had some Surrey at home, so she's going to do it in a very kind of dark turquoisey teal colour for the Surrey, and a light colour of sort of duck egg blue for the merino. And this cowl is going to be something that I start a knit along for, because two of us at least are going to be knitting it. So I I'm probably going to pop something on the Ravelry thread and put in a time frame for the velvet mirror cowl. I do still have to get the pattern, but I now have this yarn to knit it with, and I'm on the verge of just going, I really want to wind this up and cast it on, but I have to hold myself back because I have so many projects that I've started recently. This is, so 100-gram skein of 75% merino and 25% nylon, and a 50-gram skein of Surrey alpaca fluff by Botanical Yarn, and I'll just do a close-up of the label. Again, I absolutely love Botanical Yarn colours. I really like the fact that she is inspired by plants and nature so much, because she used to be a florist, or a plant expert, I think, maybe not a florist. And whilst, you know, this is superwash merino, I have a plan for it, and it's just beautiful. So watch this space. I will probably sort it out for the next episode where I work out exactly what I'm doing for this knit along, but I will organise a knit along for the Velvet Mirror Cowl by Andrea Mowry, and I will just pop a picture in here so that you can actually see what the pattern is. It is beautiful, and I like a lot of things like the Grand Canyon, it just doesn't do it justice seeing it in photo form. In person it looks fab and it feels so soft and lovely, and I will be knitting it in the same colours as the sample, because once you see a sample and you look at it and you go, that looks gorgeous, you just want to do the same. So that is my plan. Then I did pop by Ann Catton bag to get a pin, like I do every year. So this is a great little cat peeking up behind the yarn, saying shh. I have a few of these now, and I was saying to, I can't remember her name, but the lady who designs the art for these and creates them, that she needs to make fewer because I'm only allowed one a year. So I have to choose one each time to buy, and this will go on one of my project bags. Yeah, so obviously I love cats and yarn, so it's all perfect. Couple more things I bought. So I did also get some soles, felted soles by Joe's Toes, who were there, and this is for the slippers that I made, the Carapar by Rosa Pomar, just to make them a bit more durable. So I'll sew these to the bottom. These have some grippy bits underneath, so they add some extra grip on there. A bit of a silly thing, I believe these will be too big for my feet. I did ask for size 4, which these probably are, but what I should have really done was taken the slippers with me to actually show, and then we could have chosen the size that would work the best. So I will probably have to cut these down, but I will give you some feedback on how they do, how easy they are to sew on, and how they wear as well afterwards. I'm going to do a test with one pair of slippers and then possibly do something different with another pair of slippers, so watch this space for that. And then the last thing I bought was this lovely project bag with puffins in sweaters on it. So this is a design by Emma Ball. She does the artwork and then has it printed on things, including project bags, and I just thought this was adorable. It's quite a big project bag, so I have a feeling it will fit, you know, a large shawl or a light sweater in it in terms of the yarn quantities, and my grandmother is obsessed with puffins, so I had to go with that pattern, and my friend also bought the same, so we have matching project bags, which I love. And this fits all of my acquisitions from Unravel, so I think that justifies however much I spent and bought yesterday. But yeah, I do recommend Unravel as a festival. It did get quite busy kind of midday, but we spent a really long time looking around. I think if you were a bit quicker than we were, you would have found it absolutely fine going 9 AM and then sort of it being fairly quiet still for a couple of hours. Yeah, it's a different kind of fair. It's not so, I don't know, it's crowded after a while, but there's something unique about it, basically, and I really enjoy going, and hopefully the vendors did as well, especially as there were quite a few new ones, including one of my all-time favourite, Bird Street Yarn, who I didn't buy any from because I have too much already. Yeah, so I love it, and I'll be there again next year, I imagine. So yeah, and that is everything really. So thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode and anything else that I am putting onto YouTube, and I hope you have a lovely couple of weeks. See you soon. Bye.